Have you ever felt invisible in your own family, like no matter what you do, it's never enough? Like you're the ghost standing in the corner while everyone else gets the spotlight? Yeah, that was me. My name's Axel Stone. I'm 29. I run a private investment firm out of Minnesota's Tone Ventures. We manage just over $30 million. But let me tell you something, no number in that portfolio has ever quieted the noise in my head, or softened the ache in my chest from what I grew up with. I was born in the land of pine trees and icy lakes, a place that looks like a postcard but sometimes feels like a prison. This town, my hometown, is where all my happiest memories and most painful truths are buried. It's where I learned that love can feel like a chokehold, and family can either lift you up or break your spirit. My father, Richard Stone, was the pride of Minneapolis, a towering figure in the legal world. He built a law firm that served the state's elite, from billionaire CEOs to politicians who shook hands with the president. Everyone admired him. Everyone, except maybe me. To me, he wasn't a role model. He was a wall, always watching, always judging. You couldn't get a smile out of him unless you delivered excellence, and even then, it felt like feeding a lion. He had this way of speaking, smooth and controlled, but every word carried weight. His eyes, calculating, like he was constantly scoring you on some secret scale you could never quite pass. If you've ever been in a room with someone who made you shrink just by walking in, then you know exactly what I mean. My mother, Elizabeth, was the opposite, graceful, kind, and patient. She came from money old Chicago wealth and gave up everything to become a wife and mother. She wore her sacrifices with quiet dignity. Blonde hair, soft blue eyes, and a smile that could calm the chaos inside me, even as a child. I think she tried to keep us whole, tried to balance the scales between me and my dad. But some cracks run too deep for even the strongest woman to fill. Then there was my twin brother Ryder. He's the golden child, the polished one, the version of me people liked better. We shared the same face, sure. But while my reflection looked back at me with storm clouds in the eyes, Ryder's always held sunlight. Neatly parted brown hair, confident smile, the kind of guy who could charm a room full of strangers in 5 minutes flat. He knew how to work people, especially our dad. And our dad adored him for it. Not just because Ryder was charming, but because he knew how to be what my father wanted. Ryder spoke Dad's language. He mirrored him. Meanwhile, I was blunt, defiant, too raw for their polished world. If Ryder was the heir, I was the sparrowwise trailing behind. I remember one night, he must have been 17, I overheard my father on the phone. He said, "Ryder's going places. Axel. He's too emotional, too volatile, too emotional." Like it was a flaw. Like I should have been ashamed of feeling. You ever carry around a sentence like that? Let me know in the comments if someone ever boxed you in with just a few careless words. Anyway, that was the moment I decided. If I couldn't win my father's approval, I'd build my own empire. On my terms, I swore I'd never need his validation again. But here's the thing. When your foundation is built on proving someone wrong, you never stop fighting even when you've already won. That's what this story is really about. Not just about money, power, or rivalry, but about identity. About trying to be seen when your own family refuses to look. About realizing that sometimes, the hardest person to forgive is yourself. I built my life with my fists clenched, ready to battle anyone who tried to define me. But the real war, it was inside my own skin. And that war didn't end with success. It ended the day I finally asked myself, who am I, when I stopped trying to impress the people who never saw me to begin with. That's where everything began to change, and maybe, just maybe, that's where healing starts. Now I'm asking you, have you ever felt like the black sheep in your own family? Like you're constantly fighting for a seat at a table that was never set for you? Drop a comment, let's talk. I'm not the only one, right? Let's find each other in this story. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own family? Like everyone else got the script to a plan, you were left to improvise. That's how it's always been for me. We lived in Westlake Hills, just outside Austin, in one of those picture-perfect mansions with a long driveway, massive glass windows, and a view of a private lake that shimmered like a postcard. Inside, marble floors, abstract art, and furniture no one dared sit on. From the outside, people thought we had it all. But to me, that house wasn't a home. It was a showroom, a polished set where each family member performed a role except me. I didn't fit the script. Growing up, my brother Mason and I were inseparable. Backyard campouts, mud wars, chasing frogs near the lake, we were a team. But by the time we hit middle school, things changed. Mason became the golden boy. He had charm, timing, a magnetic laugh. He knew how to say what people wanted to hear, especially my father. I didn't lie, didn't sugarcoat, didn't play along. I said what I meant, even if it stung. My dad called it being defiant. I called it being real. Let me tell you about the night that drove that wedge deeper. I was 10. My father, William Crane, a tech executive with too much pride and too little time, hosted a lavish dinner party. It was one of those evenings where the chandeliers glowed like movie spotlights and the servers wore white gloves. Mason was working the room like a mini politician, shaking hands, cracking jokes, making the guests roar with laughter. They adored him. Me. I was curled up in a leather chair in the corner, flipping through a book on stock trends I had borrowed from the city library. I remember it clearly. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, and I was deep into a section on dividends when my dad walked over. "Logan," he said, folding his arms, "are you seriously going to sit there all night like some weirdo?" I looked up. I didn't raise my voice, didn't flinch. I just said, "I don't like pretending, Dad." He stared at me, silent for a moment, then shook his head and walked away. That small moment, it split something inside me. Now here's the part that still tightens my chest. My mum saw the whole thing. After the last guest left, and the house fell quiet, she sat beside me on the couch. She didn't say much, just brushed the hair from my forehead and whispered, "You don't have to be like anyone else, Logan. You are you." And I love that night stuck with me. And honestly, I want to ask you, have you ever had a moment like that? One where someone finally saw you, not the version everyone else expected. Drop a comment if you've ever felt like the odd one out, or if someone's quiet support meant the world when no one else understood. Tirade every single one. Let's talk. Have you ever felt like the only person in your family who just didn't fit in, no matter how hard you tried? Like you were speaking a different language, living in the same house but breathing different air. That's how it was for me. On the surface, we had everything: money, vacations, a spotless home in the suburbs of Connecticut. But inside, I always felt like a guest, an outsider wearing someone else's name. The rare moments when I felt truly alive didn't happen under the marble ceilings of that house. They happened far from it, in a small, worn-down cabin tucked near the pine forests of northern Oregon. That's where my real roots were. My grandfather, Jack, used to be a lumberjack. He was this towering man with hands like sandpaper and a voice that could calm a storm. His hair had gone silver, but his blue eyes still burned with a quiet fire, like he knew more than he'd ever say. He didn't love me because I was the smart one or the funny one. He loved me because he saw himself in me, the raw parts, the stubborn parts, the ones that didn't shine but held on anyway. Every summer, my brother Mason and I were sent to stay with them. And for me, those weeks were heaven. I'd wake up before sunrise and follow Grandpa into the forest, where he'd teach me to listen, not just to birds or trees but to the silence. He showed me how to recognize tree bark by touch, how to find my way without a compass, how to be still long enough to hear the earth breathe. I remember one morning, we were sitting on a mossy rock, just watching a deer through the brush. Looked over at me and said, "Logan, life's like a forest. You'll get lost sometimes, but if you keep your heart honest, you'll find your way again." That line never left me. What do you think? Has life ever led you into a dark forest? Did you make it out? Mason never really liked the woods. He preferred sitting in the kitchen playing cards with Grandma June or cracking jokes to make her laugh. He had this way of lighting up a room just by being in it. People were drawn to him. And I won't lie, it stung. I'd be standing in the same room and somehow still feel invisible. Grandma June was small but fierce. She wore her silver hair in a tight bun and always smelled like cinnamon and pine. Her eyes were soft, but she saw through everything. She loved us both. But she had this way of looking at me like she knew I was carrying something heavy. One night, when I was about 10, she hugged me before bed and whispered, "Logan, you've got a huge heart, but you have to guard it. Not everyone will know what to do with something that pure." I didn't fully get it back then, but later, her words came back to me like thunder. Things changed fast when Mason and I turned 15. The distance between me and my father grew sharper, like a rope pulled too tight. He was a corporate lawyer, always chasing prestige, always needing to prove something. I never saw the point. He barely looked at me unless I was being corrected. One night, over dinner, he dropped the bomb, said he wanted us to attend a fancy prep school in New Hampshire. "It's the best place to shape your future," he said. But I wasn't interested in being shaped like him. I pushed back hard. "I'm not leaving Oregon, Dad. I want to stay here, with Grandma, with Grandpa, with Mum," and I meant it. Because that cabin, that forest, that was the only place I didn't feel like I had to earn love. Now, let me ask you, if your heart belongs to one place, but your life is being pulled to another, what do you do? Do you stay loyal to your roots, or do you follow the current? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to fight to stay where you felt whole? I'm listening. Have you ever looked into your father's eyes and felt like a stranger? Like no matter what you said or did, you'd never be enough. That morning, we were standing on the back porch of our home in Spokane. The breeze was cool, but his stare was colder. "Logan," he said, voice like steel, "you need to grow up. The world doesn't care about your little adventures in the woods." I tightened my grip on the folding knife in my hand, not as a threat, just to keep from shaking. "I'm not chasing fantasies," I said quietly. "I just want to live the way that feels right to me." Then came Mason, always the fixer. My older brother stepped between us like he always did. "Dad, come on. I think the new school could actually be good for both of us. Logan just needs a little time." He gave me that rehearsed smile he always wore when things got tense. I knew what it meant. Mason didn't care about the school, he cared about peace. And about making Dad proud. Mum, gentle as ever, placed her hand on my shoulder. She leaned in and whispered, "It's going to be okay, baby," but her eyes, they were tired, and we both knew it wasn't going to be okay. I didn't end up going to that prep school in Portland. Mum talked Dad down, just like she always did, but something shifted after that. He started looking at me differently, like I was broken. Mason became the golden boy, the one Dad bragged about at cookouts and business dinners. I became the one they didn't talk about at all. When we turned 18, both Mason and I got accepted to a top-tier economics program at a university in Minneapolis. For a moment, I thought things might change, maybe we'd be equals again. But that hope vanished fast. Dad agreed to cover tuition for both of us, but before I left, he pulled me aside. No warmth, no encouragement, just this. "Logan, I'm not holding your hand like I do Mason's. If you want to prove yourself, you do it on your own." Those words didn't just sting, they carved something deep into me. I remember walking away that night, telling myself, "Fine, then I'll do it alone. No shortcuts. No handouts. If I had to build from the ground up, I would. And one day he'd see me not as the disappointment, not as the quiet one who didn't fit his mold, but as a man worth looking up to. That's the fire I've carried ever since. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been treated like the outsider in your own family? Drop your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to read it today. And if you felt that line, "I'm not holding your hand like I do Mason's," hit the like button. Because sometimes, being doubted is exactly what we need to rise. Have you ever chased success just to prove someone wrong? Not to the world, but to your own father. When I think back to the fall of my freshman year, it wasn't just about college. It was about proving that I mattered, that I deserved to be seen. I enrolled at the University of Washington, a solid choice for a kid like me who had always been called too intense for his own good. The campus looked like a postcard. Old brick buildings, winding trails lined with golden leaves, students buzzing with energy and ambition. But for me, those ivy-covered walls weren't just the beginning of higher education. They were the trenches, and I was already at war. My twin brother, Mason, started there with me. We'd always done everything together growing up, but I knew this chapter would split us. Our father had funded both our tuitions. That was where the fairness ended. While I was left to fend for myself, Mason got a shiny new Tesla for easy commutes, a fat monthly allowance, and even a few handshakes with Dad's old business buddies. I still remember the night Dad spelled it out over dinner. With steak on his plate and indifference in his voice, "Mason needs connections to succeed," he said, like it was fact, like it was biology. I just sat there, staring across the table, feeling my hand tighten around my glass. I could barely keep my voice steady. "What about me, Dad?" He looked up from his plate, unfazed. "What do you want, Leo? Your tuition's paid, don't ask for more." Those words, they didn't just sting, they cemented something. My mum, quiet as ever, reached under the table and gently placed her hand on my leg, a silent, almost apologetic gesture. But she said nothing. And in that moment, I knew Dad didn't think I had what it took. He thought I was too stiff, too idealistic, too naive for the cutthroat world of finance. And honestly, maybe I was. But I made a decision right then. I wouldn't just succeed. I'd do it without him. So while Mason was out schmoozing at student galas, laughing at rooftop parties, and shaking hands with future CEOs, I worked the night shift at the university library. I shelved books. I pointed lost freshmen to the economics section. I made minimum wage and skipped dinners to afford used textbooks, but it was mine. All of it, and each night, after my shift, I'd sit in the far back corner and dive into books, real books. Ones about financial modeling, the psychology of markets, investment strategies, and the stories of men who built fortunes from nothing but grit. There was something thrilling about understanding patterns, risks, rewards. The numbers didn't care about your last name or who your dad knew. That was my world. My safe space. Meanwhile, Mason's life looked like a movie. Student government, private mentorships, VIP access to internships before he even finished his first year. People noticed him. Professors gave him nods. Alumni asked him to coffee. He was always in the room. And yet, I didn't envy him. Not really, because deep down, I knew that everything he had was borrowed. Everything I had, I earned. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in that position? Where one sibling gets the golden road, and you're left to carve your own path out of gravel and grit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I know I'm not alone in this. What I didn't realize then, but see clearly now, is that silence can be power. While Mason was loud and lit up the room, I studied in the dark, and it made me sharp, hungry, focused. And when the real tests came, exams, but life, I was ready. Because people like me, we don't get second chances. We build the first one with our bare hands. Keep watching. There's more to this story than just rivalry. But first, what would you have done if your own dad looked you in the eye and said, "Don't ask for more. Let me know. I'll be reading." ChatGPT Noi. Have you ever felt like you were the invisible sibling? Like no matter what you did, you were always just background noise in your own family? My name's Alex Warner, and for most of my life, I was known as the other one. Not in a dramatic sob-story kind of way, it's in that subtle, soul-bruising way that creeps up on you when your older brother is the golden child. While I quietly built my life piece by piece, my brother Nathan Warner was making waves. Campus events, honors, societies. Even handpicked by our university's most respected economics professor to assist in cutting-edge research. I'd hear it in the whispers walking past crowded lecture halls. Nathan Warner's a genius. That guy's gonna be running his own firm before graduation. And every time I heard it, I'd get this odd twist in my chest. A mix of admiration and something darker. Not quite jealousy, more like resentment dressed up in silence, because deep down, I knew something they didn't. A lot of Nathan's rise wasn't from raw talent alone. It was built on the scaffolding of our father's influence, on the effortless charm he inherited, the same charm I somehow never got. I'll never forget that one winter night, our first year in college. We were in the cafeteria, the kind with flickering fluorescent lights, and the smell of stale coffee. Outside, snow blanketed the campus, muffling everything in a soft, dreamy silence. Nathan sat across from me, in a sleek, navy cashmere sweater, gift from Dad. I, on the other hand, had on a threadbare windbreaker I'd been patching up since high school. Nathan leaned forward with that practiced, effortless grin. "Alex, you should come to the Young Entrepreneurs Club. There are some people I think you need to meet. Connections, you know? Could be huge for you." I stared at my chipped coffee mug and took a slow sip before answering. "I'm good. I want to build things on my own." He chuckled lightly, kindly, and completely missing the point. "You're so damn stubborn. I'm just looking out for you." He was looking out for me. But that didn't make it easier to hear. Because I didn't want to walk down the same road paved for him by Dad. I wanted something real, something mine, even if I had to crawl through glass to get there. Sophomore year. While Nathan was filming pitch reels and networking over sushi, I started investing. Not with trust fund money or angel investors, but with tips from my job at the hardware store. I opened a brokerage account, pored over company filings late at night, read earnings reports the way most people scroll social media. My first investment was a tiny tech firm in Boston. Nobody had heard of them, but I believed in what they were building. I bought in and waited. For weeks, nothing. Then boom. The stock doubled. I made $500. Maybe that sounds small to you, but to me, that was Everest. My Everest. No borrowed hand, no family safety net. Just my gut, my research, and a little luck. Meanwhile, Nathan launched a startup with a few rich kids from business school. It was a slick app to connect small businesses with angel investors. Sounds noble, right? I later found out Dad had written the first check, paid for a lawyer to draw up their terms. I didn't even get a call. My mum, though, she noticed. She always did. Every weekend, I'd come home for dinner. Dad would brag about Nathan's new milestones like he was reading headlines. But Mum, she'd pull me aside in the kitchen, hand me a small box of her lemon cookies, look at me like she knew. Like she saw all the quiet battles I was fighting. One night, she whispered, "You're doing good, baby. I see how hard you work. Just because it's not loud doesn't mean it's not worth it." That one sentence, it did something to me. How about you? Have you ever been the quiet one, the overlooked one? Drop a comment. Tell me if you've ever had to fight twice as hard just to be seen, because some of us weren't born into the spotlight. Some of us had to build our own stage. Have you ever tried to chase something you believed in, only to have someone you love laugh in your face? It stings more than you'd think, especially when that someone is your own father. "Logan, I heard you're investing in stocks." "That's amazing, honey," my mum said one evening while we were doing dishes. Her eyes softened, and I felt something warm loosen the knot in my chest. "I'm just testing the waters, Mum. I'm not exactly Warren Buffett," I replied, half joking. She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You don't need to be. You just need to be you. I believe in you." You ever get that one moment? Just a few words that somehow lifts the weight off your shoulders. That was it for me. But my dad, he was cut from a different cloth. The next night at dinner, I brought up stocks again, hoping to share a recent win. "Big mistake." "Stocks," he scoffed, not even looking up from his plate. "You think you can outsmart the market, Logan? That's a sucker's game. You're playing with fire." I felt my gut tighten. I held my breath, then said carefully, "It's not gambling, Dad. I do research. I read. I know what I'm getting into." He looked up cold and cutting. "You don't know a damn thing. You're still a kid." If this backfires, don't come crying to me. My mum tried to step in. Stephen, he's learning. He's trying. Can't you just... But he didn't even let her finish. He turned away from me and asked my older brother Mason about his latest tech startup, like I'd vanished into the wallpaper. It hit me like a punch to the chest. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and made a promise to myself. I'm not doing this to earn his approval. I'm doing it to show I never needed it in the first place. By junior year, the small wins had started stacking up. I'd grown my portfolio to $5,000, nothing earth-shattering, but it was mine. Built with my own brain, my own instincts, I joined an investment club on campus. And for once, I didn't feel like the invisible kid at the table. I felt ... seen. People listened to me. Not because of my last name, not because of connections, but because I'd earned their respect. One afternoon, my finance professor, Mr. Thompson, called me into his office. He handed me a thick, worn book on value investing. Logan, he said, leaning forward, you've got sharp instincts, but instincts will only get you halfway. The rest, patience, discipline. Don't let your emotions run the show. That advice hit home harder than I expected, because deep down, I knew part of me was still reacting to my father every win, every calculated move, part rebellion, part validation. But I was starting to grow past that. Let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to prove someone wrong then? Realized, maybe you're proving something to yourself instead? If you've ever felt like the underdog at your own family table, comment below. Tell me your story. Let's talk about it. I'm still on that journey, but I'm no longer walking it just to silence the doubt in someone else's voice. I'm walking it to strengthen my own. Have you ever worked so hard to earn someone's approval, only to realize it might never come? That thought haunted me for years. I chased it like a finish line that kept moving, always just out of reach. And no matter how far I ran, there he was, Dylan, my cousin, my father's favorite. The golden boy who could do no wrong. Dylan wasn't just smart, he was magnetic. People noticed him, professors adored him. Investors wanted a piece of his future before he even finished school. His startup, some sleek logistics app, caught the attention of a venture capital firm. And the next thing I knew, his grinning face was on the cover of our university newsletter. Local student raises $1 million for dream startup. I read that article in the library, and it hit me like a gut punch. I should have felt proud. But what I felt was ... I had spent every semester grinding, sacrificing parties and weekends, obsessing over my trading simulations and stock analysis, trying to become someone my dad would respect. Meanwhile, Dylan floated upward like he had wings. Watching him, I started questioning everything. Was I delusional to believe hard work alone was enough? Was I walking down a dead-end street, thinking I could matter too? Time blurred. 4 years went by in a flash. We both graduated with honors. On that day, I stood among a sea of students in caps and gowns, sweat sticking my shirt to my back, and looked up at the bleachers. My mum waved with tears in her eyes. My dad stood beside her, arms crossed. When Dylan walked past, Dad reached out, gave him a firm pat on the back, and said, "I'm proud of you, son." When it was my turn, he simply muttered, "Good job, Jason." No warmth, no pride, just ... punctuation, ... I forced a smile, clapped for myself, and swallowed the lump in my throat. But deep inside, something cracked. Later that night, after the graduation dinner, Dad called us into his study, this dark mahogany room that always felt more like a boardroom than part of a home. He folded his hands, his voice even. "Dylan, I'm backing your startup, $1 million, plus mentorship from my partners. It's time for you to step into the real world." Dylan nodded, his eyes already sparkling with ambition. "Thank you, Uncle. I won't let you down." Then my dad turned to me. He didn't smile. "Jason, what do you want to do?" His tone didn't invite dreams, it demanded justification. Before I could answer, he added, "Whatever it is, no, this Psy won't be supporting you. You'll have to stand on your own." I met his stare. My chest was tight, but I didn't let it show. "I'll work in the stock market," I said calmly. "I don't need your help, I've got myself." He raised an eyebrow like I'd just said I wanted to walk into a storm barefoot. "Good. But remember, you fail, no one's coming to save you." I didn't flinch. I stood, nodded once, and walked out. That night, I lay in bed staring at the old ceiling fan, its slow blades casting shadows on the walls I'd known since childhood. Every corner of that room held memories: late-night reading, charts pinned to corkboards, notebooks filled with predictions. But now, it all felt done. Like a museum of who I used to be. I realized something. I couldn't grow in a house where I'd always be second best, not because I hated my father, and not because I didn't love my mum, or even Dylan, but because staying would've meant accepting the version of me they'd boxed in, so I left. The next morning, I packed my old duffel with 2 pairs of jeans, a couple of shirts, my laptop, and 5 books on market cycles. That was it. My mum stood in the doorway, eyes red-rimmed. "Are you sure you want to go, Jason?" she whispered. I paused. My throat burned, but I nodded. "I need to do this, Mum. I have to figure out who I am and my own," and I did. Or at least, I started. Have you ever had to leave everything behind, just to become who you really are? Tell me below, have you ever felt like the underdog in your own family? I read every comment. Let's talk. Have you ever stood in the middle of a crowded room and still felt completely invisible? That's how I felt the morning I left home. My mum held me tight, her breath warm against my shoulder, and whispered, "You'll always have me, no matter where you are." I believed her. I still do. But her love wasn't enough to fill the silence my father always left behind. He wasn't home when I left. He was in his corner office downtown, probably pacing in front of some legal team, too busy orchestrating another multi-million-dollar lawsuit to notice I was gone. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I wasn't. Still, something inside me cracked when I placed that note on the kitchen table. "I'm leaving to find my own path. Thank you, Mum and Dad, for everything." I didn't know if he'd read it. I wasn't even sure he'd care. But I needed to write it for closure. For myself, the next chapter began in a rundown studio apartment on 4th and Hennepin, downtown Minneapolis, just over 400 square feet, peeling paint, creaky wood floors, a kitchen no bigger than a closet, and a window that looked out onto a street buzzing with sirens, honking, and late-night shouting. But to me, it was freedom. For the first time, I didn't have to earn approval, or chase anyone's expectations. It was mine. Every inch of that crumbling space was mine, of course. My savings scraped together from late-night shifts and weekend tutoring during college weren't going to last long. I had maybe 3 months before things got desperate, so I did what everyone tells you to do. I hit the job boards. I applied to dozens of firms, big names, small names, some I'd never heard of, finance, analytics, entry-level, internships, anything. The responses trickled in. A few interviews, mostly polite rejection emails. "You've got promise, but we're looking for someone with more experience." The message was always the same: experience, connections, neither of which I had, and both of which I refused to fake or inherit. Those early weeks were brutal. I lived off instant ramen and 99-cent coffee. I barely slept. Every morning at 5 a.m., I was hunched over my laptop, analyzing stock charts, trying to squeeze any kind of return from the tiny portfolio. I managed myself. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes, like the day I invested in an energy stock right before a damning report dropped, I lost hundreds. I sat in my freezing apartment, eyes locked on that sea of red on my screen, and felt like the world was laughing at me. But then I remembered something my grandfather once told me: the forest will never make it easy for you, Jamie, but if you stop walking, you'll never see the clearing. I kept walking, and after 3 months of rejection, I got an email that changed everything. Blue Wave Investments, a small firm. They needed an analyst assistant. Entry level, low pay, no prestige. But it was a start. I pulled out my one decent suit, one from college graduation, brushed off the dust, looked in the mirror, and whispered, "You've got this, Jamie." Their office was in a sleek glass high-rise with polished elevators and sharp-dressed people talking in numbers and acronyms. I felt like a kid sneaking into a grown-up world, but I walked in anyway. The job wasn't glamorous. I wasn't analyzing billion-dollar IPOs or making deals on trading floors. I was inputting data, double-checking spreadsheets, building basic models, and fetching coffee more times than I care to admit. But, you know what? Every line of code, every report I delivered, every 12-hour shift I was building something. And I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where everything felt small, but deep down you knew it was the beginning of something big? Because that's what Blue Wave was for me. Let me know in the comments, what was the moment that started your journey? Not the big win, the first step. I'd love to hear your story. Have you ever worked so hard to prove yourself, only to wonder if anyone truly sees you at all? That's how it felt in those early years. I was 23, barely out of college, and somehow landed a job at a mid-sized financial firm in Chicago. Most of the work was meant for senior analysts grueling stuff, but I pushed through, eager to learn. I spent countless hours dissecting earnings reports, studying risk assessments, and trying not to lose my cool every time the market crashed. 14-hour days became my normal. Weekends blurred into Mondays. At first, no one at the office took me seriously. I was the youngest one there, and most of my coworkers had years of experience and mortgages. I was just the kid. But slowly, that changed. I remember one day, we were reviewing a quarterly report from a big-name tech company, and something didn't sit right with me. I double-checked the numbers, ran some scenarios, and finally spoke up. It turned out there was an error, one that would have cost the firm millions. After the meeting, my boss, Mr. Whitaker, gruff man who barely said more than morning, walked over, gave me a firm pat on the shoulder, and said, "Good catch, Mason, solid work." That moment, it lit something inside me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something right. But here's the thing. Even with the small wins, I couldn't shake the emptiness. I hadn't been home in months. My mum still called every week, always eager to update me on my older brother, Tyler. "Tyler just closed a huge deal," she'd say, her voice bright. "He's expanding the app to Europe. Your dad is so proud." Then the pause, the softer tone. "And how are you, Mason? Are you doing okay?" I'd force a smile, even though she couldn't see it. "Yeah, I'm good, Mum. Work's busy, but I love it." But after every call, I'd sit in silence, the glow of my apartment's city lights bouncing off the walls. I couldn't help but wonder, was I just chasing Tyler's shadow? I avoided going home. Not because I didn't miss my mum, but because facing my dad felt like walking into a quiet war. He never asked about my job. Just talked about the weather, the neighborhood, golf. Tyler always tried to rope me into conversations, tell jokes, lighten the mood. I appreciated it. But I kept my guard up. I couldn't take the comparisons, spoken or not. Instead, I found refuge in a different place. My grandparents' cabin, 3 hours north, near the Wisconsin border, tucked into a quiet stretch of pine forest. That place, it healed me. There, I wasn't the second son or the underachiever. I was just Mason. But with each visit, my grandfather looked more tired. He still had that strong frame and his signature laugh, but he moved slower. He coughed more. My grandmother told me it was chronic pneumonia, something he'd carried since his lumberjack days in the deep winters. I was scared, but he always waved me off. "Don't give me that look, Mason," he'd chuckle, his voice gravelly. "I'm old. Getting sick's part of the deal. But look at you, you're doing just fine. I'm proud of you. You're living honest, like I taught you." One cold afternoon, we sat by the fireplace as the snow fell outside. He told stories about near misses with black bears, about felling trees in the dead of night. And then he turned to me, eyes gleaming. "You're like me," he said softly. "You've got a strong heart, but it's tender to don't let the world change that." I didn't say much, just nodded. But something in his words carved a space inside me I didn't know I needed. Weeks later, I was back in the office when My phone rang. It was my grandmother. Her voice cracked. "Mason, your grandpa's not well. He's asking for you." I didn't think twice. I dropped everything and drove straight up snow piling on the highway as I sped past the city lights. When I reached the cabin, the fire was still going, but everything else felt still. My grandfather lay in bed, his face pale, each breath a quiet struggle. I sat beside him, took his hand rough and calloused. The same hand that once taught me to split logs, to track deer, to stand tall in a world that often wants to push you down. "Grandpa," I whispered, my throat tight. He opened his eyes barely, and smiled. "Don't cry, Mason, you're strong, just promise me. You'll keep your heart true. That's all that matters. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone believe in you so deeply that it changed the way you saw yourself? Drop a comment below, tell me who that person was for you. Or if you've never had that, maybe this story can be that voice today. Because sometimes, it only takes one person to make you feel seen, and when they're gone, you carry that light forward because it's yours now. Have you ever lost the one person who made you feel truly seen? That's what it felt like for Meetha. World falling silent in a single moment. My grandfather wasn't just family. He was the only one who understood me without needing to ask questions. The only one who didn't try to fix or change me. The last person I trusted completely. It started just days after he whispered, "Never forget what I taught you." I nodded, but I felt something in me begin to crack. A few days later, my dad made a decision that tore through me. He arranged for my grandfather to be admitted to a medical facility. Even though we all knew he didn't want that. They said it was for his safety. But I knew he didn't want cold walls and white sheets. He wanted the forest. The smell of pine. The sounds of his birds in the morning. Still, my family, dad, mum, and grandma took turns sitting at his bedside. I showed up every night after work, holding on to whatever time I had left. It was 2 weeks later when the call came. That night, I sat by the hospital window, watching the snow fall silently over Milwaukee. It wasn't just grief, it felt like the world itself had shattered. He was gone. The one person who saw me for who I really was, who taught me how to live with heart. That night, I held the wooden necklace he carved for me when I was 10. Piece of cedar with a bear etched in. "You're a bear, Leo," he once told me. "Strong, fierce, don't ever let them tame you." I remember clutching that pendant so hard, it left a mark on my palm. After that, everything blurred. My job at Clear Lake Finance felt mechanical. I logged in, ran spreadsheets, nodded through meetings, but my soul was somewhere else. Every number I typed reminded me of the days we spent in the woods, tracking deer, or listening to tree frogs near the creek behind the cabin. Then, 4 days after he passed, my grandmother called. Her voice sounded worn, like it was barely holding itself together. "Leo, sweetheart, ... can you come home? We're preparing the service." I took 3 days off and drove north, winding along the familiar roads lined with frost-covered birches. Every mile carried the weight of memory, his laugh echoing in my head. The way he used to tell stories about wild bears like they were old friends. When I pulled into the gravel drive, Grandma was on the porch. Her smile tried to be strong, but her eyes betrayed everything. "You made it," she whispered, hugging me with all the strength she had left. I hugged her back, feeling how small she suddenly seemed. She had always been a pillar, now, without him, she felt fragile, almost transparent. The funeral took place in a modest chapel near the edge of the woods. The air was bitter cold. You could see everyone's breath hanging in the air like ghosts of what we couldn't say out loud. My mother stood beside me, trying to remain stoic. My brother Mason, in a sharp black suit, kept staring at the floor. My dad, ... Well, he was a statue, no emotion, just silence. People from the town came to, old friends, neighbors, men who used to work the mill with my grandfather, and women who'd heard his stories about chasing off wolves with nothing but a flashlight and a laugh. They embraced me, shared small memories. He once fixed my fence in the pouring rain. He taught my son to split wood. He was a real one. Then it was my turn. I walked toward the coffin, unsure of how to breathe. His face looked so peaceful, like he might open his eyes at any moment and make a joke about me crying. But he didn't. I rested my hand on his chest, still cold, distant hand. That's when it hit me. He wasn't coming back. That kind of pain doesn't scream. It sits inside you like a quiet fire. He was the one who believed in me when no one else did, who taught me to trust the woods, to respect silence, to never fear walking alone. Now, I felt alone in a way I'd never known. Have you ever lost someone who made you feel real? If you've been through something like this, or if someone in your life gave you a gift that still protects you today, drop it in the comments. I'd love to read your story, and if you're still lucky enough to have that person in your life, call them tonight, before the snow falls. ChatGPT, Gnoi. Have you ever felt like your whole life changed with a single sentence, one you didn't even expect to hear? I did. And it wasn't during some big moment like graduation or a wedding. It was during the reading of my grandfather's will. Thank you, Grandpa. For everything, I whispered, barely getting the words out as we stood by his grave. My mum stood beside me, quietly holding my hand. Her tears slipped down without a sound. Behind us, Mason, my younger brother, stood silently, arms folded, lips pressed together, and my father, he kept his distance. No tears, no words. Just a cold stare at something far off, like he had somewhere better to be than his own father's funeral. Later that afternoon, we were called into the lawyer's office in downtown Helena, Montana. I didn't expect anything. Grandpa had already given me so much in life: his time, his stories, his trust. That wooden cabin by the lake, I figured it would go to Grandma, along with a few savings tucked away for the family. That was enough. More than enough. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and pine wood. A small, cluttered room with faded curtains and books that hadn't been opened in years. We sat at a long table, Mum, Dad, Mason, Grandma, and me. The lawyer, Mr. Carlyle, an older man with white hair and a worn-out voice, opened a thick envelope. This will was prepared by Mr. Walter Reed on October 12, 2020. He began reading in that slow courtroom tone. I wasn't really listening, just staring out the window, watching the wind push through the branches outside, until the words hit. The entirety of Mr. Walter Reed's investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $5 million, is bequeathed to Logan Reed. The air left the room. Just like that, silence. I blinked. $5 million. My mouth went dry. I had no idea Grandpa even had investments. He drove a beat-up Ford and still used a flip phone. I looked at Grandma. She just nodded faintly, like she'd been waiting for this day all along. Mum squeezed my hand, her eyes wide with stunned pride. Across the table, Mason's jaw tightened. His hands clenched into fists. Dad's face changed immediately. His calm expression curdled into fury. "Excuse me," he snapped. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. "All of it, to Logan. Nothing for anyone else?" Mr. Carlyle stayed calm, barely glancing up from the will. Mr. Reed also left a letter, specifically addressed to Logan. He handed it to me. A small white envelope with my name in my grandfather's steady handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. I could hear my heart pounding louder than the lawyer's voice. Inside, the letter read, "Logan, you are the one I trust most, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest. You've never tried to be someone you're not. This portfolio, it took me a lifetime to build, and it's not meant to impress. It's meant to help you build something better for yourself, and for the people around you. Hold your ground. Remember the values I taught you. Be the wolf, not the echo. I love you, always." The ink blurred as my tears hit the page. I could almost hear his voice again, smell the pine wood of the cabin, see the old fishing rod he kept fixing with duct tape. I held the letter to my chest, but when I looked up, Dad's stare cut through me like ice. His face twisted into something between disbelief and betrayal. Like I'd done something wrong, like I'd taken something that was his. And maybe you're wondering, what would you have done in my place? Would you feel guilt, pride, fear? Drop a comment and tell Miff $5 million landed in your lap, but also dropped a bomb in your family. Would you take it, or walk away? I didn't ask for this, but maybe Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing. And maybe, for the first time, it's my turn to lead. Have you ever been handed something so big, so unexpected, that it made the people you love the most turn their backs on you? That's exactly what happened the day I learned my grandfather had left me everything. We were sitting in the attorney's office. The air thick with tension. Mr. Carmichael, our family's lawyer, had just read the will. My name echoed off the polished wood-paneled walls. $5 million, every cent of it. I didn't even have time to process the shock before my father's voice cut through the room. This isn't fair, he spat. His voice was flat, but sharp, like ice breaking under pressure. My own father left it all to Logan. A kid with zero experience. I'm his son. I deserve at least a share. My brother Mason said nothing, but I noticed his fingers twitch slightly on the armrest. Like he wanted to say something but couldn't. My mum squeezed my hand under the table, her grip firm, protective like she could shield me from the storm that was brewing. Mr. Carmichael cleared his throat. Mr. Henry's wishes were clear. This was all handled legally, with witnesses. It's not subject to change. That only made things worse. My dad pushed back from the table so violently, his chair scraped across the floor. This isn't about wishes, it's favoritism. Logan can't handle this kind of responsibility. He'll ruin everything my father built. I turned toward him, and my voice came out low. Even you think I can't handle it? He didn't flinch, just stared. Grandpa believed in me, why can't you? His eyes narrowed, and when he spoke, every word dripped with resentment. Because you're not Mason, you don't have the instinct, the vision, you're just stubborn. My father made a mistake putting his faith in you, his words. They didn't just sting. They broke something inside me. Not because they were loud, but because deep down, some part of me feared he might be right. My mother stood, her voice shook, but there was steel in it. Caleb, that's enough. Logan is your son. Be proud of him. Your father was. Dad turned away. He didn't say another word. But I saw it, his shoulders stiffened, trembled just for a second. Not rage, something else, regret, doubt. Then Mason finally spoke. Congratulations, Logan, you deserve it. But his eyes said something else. I saw pain, maybe jealousy, maybe betrayal. I wanted to say, I didn't ask for this. I wanted to explain that I never expected any of it. But what would be the point? Sometimes silence is the only thing strong enough to hold the truth. And then Grandma Rose stood. The quiet matriarch, who'd been silent the entire time. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Henry chose Logan because he knew his heart. She said, "You may not understand it, but respect it." She looked at each of them, my dad, Mason, then finally me, double quotes Logan. "You know what you have to do." I nodded. Not because I was ready, but because I understood what that nod meant. This money wasn't a gift, it was a mission. The will reading ended like a broken family photo faces. Frozen, disconnected. My dad left without another word. My mum paused, gave me a long hug, then followed. Mason stayed behind a second longer. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Do well, Logan, don't let Grandpa down." Then he was gone too. That night, I flew back to Chicago with my grandfather's letter tucked in my coat pocket. I returned not with celebration but with a strange cocktail of pride, confusion, and the sharp pressure of responsibility. I didn't know how to manage $5 million. I lived in a studio apartment above a bakery. My most expensive possession was probably my laptop, but I opened it, and I started. There it was, my grandfather's legacy. Blue chip stocks, government bonds, index ETFs. No flashy gambles, just years of patient, careful building. He didn't just leave me money, he left me a roadmap, and a quiet message. I believe in you even if they don't. I still remember that night vividly. The soft whir of the heater. The city lights blinking beyond my window. The gravity of it all pressing against my chest like a weight I didn't ask for but one I couldn't drop. Now let me ask you, if someone gave you everything, but it cost you your family's love, would you still take it? Let me know what you would have done. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from people who've been underestimated before, or worse, betrayed. Because this wasn't just an inheritance, it was the beginning of everything. Have you ever inherited something you didn't ask for? Something so powerful it felt like both a blessing and a burden. That's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't some Wall Street prodigy or a guy from a finance background. I was a small-town kid from Oregon, raised by a quiet family and a grandfather who wore flannel year-round and knew every bird call in the forest behind our home. To most people, Grandpa Joe was just a retired forest ranger with a knack for woodworking and blueberry pie. But what no one knew, not even my dad, was that Joe Green was also a brilliant self-taught investor. The kind who read annual reports like bedtime stories and turned modest paychecks into millions with patience, guts, and timing. When he passed, the lawyer handed me a folder. Inside it, a letter, a flash drive, and a simple line written in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting: "Be your own wolf." I didn't understand it at first, but within days, I realized what he'd left me wasn't just money, it was a challenge. During the weeks that followed, my life split into two speeds. By day, I worked at Northview Capital, a mid-sized firm in Portland where I fetched coffee, edited reports, and tried not to sound like a complete idiot in meetings. By night, I pored over Grandpa's investment notes, page after page of hand-marked graphs, oil-stained spreadsheets, and quiet genius. I wasn't just trying to hold on to the $5 million he left. I was trying to understand the mind behind it. But pressure crept in fast. Not from work, from family. My father David Green called more than once. His voice, cold. Not sad, not proud, just ... demanding. "You know that money is not just yours, Nathan," he said. "It's for the family. Don't be selfish." It wasn't about being selfish, it was about trust. Grandpa chose me. Not because I was the smartest or the oldest, but because he believed I wouldn't waste it. I told Dad exactly that. Grandpa left it to me, I said, calm but firm. I won't betray his trust. You ever had to stand your ground when every part of you wants peace instead? It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. One evening, needing air and silence, I drove to the cabin where my grandparents used to live. The place was quiet, the woods still. I brought Flower's white daisies, his favorite tanned lay. Then gently at the edge of the grave, we'd carved beneath two pines. I stood there for a long time, wind slicing through my coat, hands shaking. "Grandpa," I whispered, "I don't know if I'm ready for this, but I swear I'll try my best." And something shifted inside me, a resolve, a fire, a voice inside that simply said, "Keep going." It's been for years since that moment. 4 years of late nights, bloodshot eyes, learning the language of capital gains and venture risk. For years of people assuming I was just lucky, while I sat, hunched over charts until dawn. 4 years of my dad still not speaking to me unless he's asking how much it's worth now. The portfolio has grown from $5 million to $10.4 million. Not by accident, not by luck. Through work, through knowing when to play it safe and when to bet on the edge. Some nights, I'd stare at a single company's quarterly report for hours, wondering, is this the one? Would Grandpa have seen this before the others? But the hardest part, the letter, "Be your own wolf." I think I get it now. It's not about being a lone wolf. It's about not running with the wrong pack. It's about choosing your path even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I didn't want to stay someone's assistant forever, so I built something. Quietly, carefully, I started laying the foundation for my own fund. A space where I could back ideas no one else believed in, where I could write checks to people like Grandpa Quiet, dreamers in flannel shirts who didn't speak the language of pitch decks but who had real vision. 3 years in, the foundation was solid, not just financially, but in spirit. I wasn't just growing Grandpa's legacy, I was creating my own. And you reading this right now, If someone handed you a fortune, would you guard it or grow it? Would you let others tell you what's fair, or would you honor the one person who believed in you before anyone else? Leave me a comment. Let me know. What would you have done? Have you ever felt like you were running towards something, but also running away? That's how it all began for me. Not with a business plan or a polished pitch, but with a quiet, burning need to prove that I was more than the sum of my family's expectations. More than my father's dismissals, more than someone else's shadow. My name's Jack Whitman. And 3 years into working for a rising investment firm in Seattle, I made a choice that scared the hell out of me. I left. I'd had early wins, one in a lithium battery startup, another in a small AI company with big vision. Both hit fast. That gave me credibility in the room. But with each success, the pressure doubled. I kept telling myself I was doing it for Grandpa Roy, who taught me to think long-term. But deep down, I was doing it to prove something bigger. That I could build a legacy without my dad, without shortcuts. Without approval, I started my own firm and called it Granite and Ulatar, name that honored my grandfather's favorite saying, "Be steady as stone, but never stop shining." I leased a tiny corner office in downtown Minneapolis. No conference room, just 3 desks. It was me, Sarah, my co-founder and college friend, and a sharp, bright-eyed assistant named Mia, who brewed stronger coffee than we could ever drink. Our mission: back startups that weren't just chasing profit, but chasing change. Sustainability, equity, real solutions. We didn't want to just invest, we wanted to stand for something. Grandpa used to say, "Money can be loud, Jack, but values echo longer." And those first few months, brutal. I knocked on every door I could. Reached out to alumni, friends of friends, even cold-called investors I'd only seen in headlines. Most said no. A few were polite about it, but others, not so much. One guy, big fund manager, old school, actually laughed. "You're what, 28? You've got no track record, no family name behind your fund, and no guarantee. Why on earth would I back you?" I could have walked out, humiliated. But instead, I walked out. More focused. I remembered hiking with Grandpa in the Boundary Waters, how he always chose the hardest trails. "The view's better when you work for it," he said. I believed that. So we pushed on. We refined our pitch, got sharper with numbers, clearer with purpose, and then things shifted. One of our early investments, a scrappy startup out of Colorado working with recycled plastics, won a national sustainability award. Suddenly, the phones started ringing. Forbes ran a piece. "A fund with teeth and heart. Granite and Light is changing the game for values-based investment." That article changed everything. Bigger investors started reaching out. Not just for small talks, real offers. Within a year, we crossed the $30 million mark in our portfolio. But you know what? It wasn't the money that mattered most. It was the fact that I built something that no one else could claim. Not my dad, not Ryder. Yeah, Ryder, my older brother. The golden child. My dad never missed a chance to remind me how well he was doing. I remember one holiday dinner I couldn't escape, where my father leaned over his drink and said, "Ryder just opened a new branch in Chicago. His business is booming." He didn't even ask how I was doing. I just smiled, nodded, and let it roll off. Because that night, I realized something important. I didn't need to win his comparison game anymore. I already had what I needed: my work, my values, my people. And every day I showed up to that little office in Minneapolis, I knew I was building a future with roots of its own. What about you? Have you ever felt like you had to prove your worth outside your family's expectations? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Let's talk about the moments that shaped us. Even if no one clapped when they happened. Have you ever stood in front of your father, realizing he doesn't really know who you are, and he maybe never did? That's how I felt that afternoon, sitting across from him in the same mahogany study, where he once lectured me about discipline and legacy. He smiled as I walked in, but there was something artificial in it, like a man trying to sell a house he no longer lived in. "Logan," he said, like testing the name, as if it might sound different now. I gave him a faint smile. "I'm good, Dad, work's going well." That's all I gave him, just that. I didn't elaborate. I didn't tell him about the non-profit tech incubator I'd been quietly building for 2 years, or the veterans I was helping transition into startup life. He wouldn't have understood it anyway. He'd try to fit it into his own outdated frame of success. And I was tired of trying to translate my life for people who only spoke in stock prices and quarterly returns. My mum, on the other hand, always got it. Or at least, she tried. She called me every Sunday like clockwork. Sent homemade banana bread in tins that still smelled like her kitchen. "You make me proud, Logan," she told me once. Her voice had this warmth over the phone that filled up the hollow spaces I didn't even know were there. "I know you're meant for more than what your father thinks success means." You ever hear something that makes your chest ache, but in the best way? That was it for me. I'd stop by to visit my grandma when I could. She lived near Glenwood Cemetery, where my grandfather James was buried. I'd bring fresh tulips, sweep off the leaves from the stone, then sit with her on the porch. She told me stories about James, about how he built things with his hands, about how proud he'd be of me not for making money, but for making meaning. "You're James Fire," she said once, gripping my hand tighter than I expected. "Don't let anyone dim it." Those words stuck. Meanwhile, my brother Tyler was still the golden boy, at least on paper. His startup, a flashy app connecting boutique retailers to logistics networks, had just announced a massive Series B round. Tens of millions. Every business magazine in the state had his grinning face on the cover. My dad never missed a chance to talk about it. "Tyler's the one carrying the Whitmore legacy forward," he'd say at dinners, voice booming with pride. But Mum saw things differently. She confided in me one evening over the phone, her voice low. "Tyler's company is bleeding cash. He grew too fast, didn't plan ahead. Some of the investors are walking." I wasn't shocked. Tyler had always known how to dazzle, how to build a stage, light it perfectly, and play the part. But he leaned too hard on our dad's network. He never learned to weather the storm on his own. A few weeks later, I was at my office just 2 blocks from the Capitol reviewing a pitch deck when my phone rang. It was Mum. "Logan," she said, hesitant, "your dad wants to meet tonight." I stopped scrolling. "What's this about?" I asked, though I already knew. You could feel the pressure shifting. She paused. "It's about Tyler, his startup, it's in trouble." The silence between us stretched. "Finally," I said, "all right, I'll come." I didn't want to, but I went. Driving to the old Whitmore estate in Oak Ridge felt surreal. The mansion still stood proudly behind its stone gates, with those tall windows and warm amber lights glowing like nothing had changed. But everything had. It wasn't home. Not anymore. Inside, the same study, same desk, same worn leather chairs. Dad was there, flanked by Tyler, who looked thinner, sleep-deprived, older than his 35 years, and Mom, standing off to the side with that familiar worried expression. There was no small talk. "Logan," my dad began, folding his hands together. "Tyler's company needs support. A key investor pulled out. We need to fill that gap quickly." He met my gaze not with his usual authority, but something closer to appeal. Not quite desperation, but nearing it. "You run Whitmore Catalyst," he continued. "You have capital. You could help." I let the silence speak for me. "Then finally, you want me to invest in Tyler's company?" My tone was even, but it cut. Tyler jumped in, voice rough but rehearsed. "Logan, I know we've grown apart. I know I haven't always been the best brother. But this startup, it's everything I've got." I looked at him, really looked at him once. We were kids who built treehouses and snuck sodas into the attic during storms. But now we were men, standing on opposite sides of a chasm built by years of favoritism, silence, and expectations neither of us asked for. So I turned to you, the reader. Yes, you. If your father had ignored your work for years, if your brother had only shown up when he needed something, would you write the check? Would you save the empire that never made space for you? Drop a comment. I want to hear what you would have done. Because what I said next changed everything. Have you ever had to look someone you once admired in the eye and say no? Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because saying yes would mean betraying yourself. That's the moment I found myself in, standing in my childhood home, staring at my brother Logan across the living room. His voice cracked with desperation, and, for a second, I wanted to help him. But just as quickly, the years of being overlooked, of watching my father praise Logan for every small win while I was invisible, came flooding back. I'm not blaming you, I told him quietly. But you had Dad. You had the contacts, the shortcuts, the handshakes in country clubs. I had to build everything alone. And now you want me to be your lifeline? How is that fair? Before Logan could respond, my father slammed his palm on the oak desk behind him. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Don't be selfish, Mason. He's your brother. You're sitting on $5 million your grandfather left behind and you can't help him? That's family. I turned slowly toward him, locking eyes. It's not yours. It's not even ours. That money was Grandpa Walter's. He trusted me with it, not because of bloodlines, but because of who I became. I honored that trust. Grew it, and I owe no one a single cent of it. You could have sliced the tension in that room with a knife. My mother stepped in, gently resting her hand on my shoulder, trying to soften things. Mason, please, just take a breath. We can talk this through, but I shook my head, calm but unyielding. Logan, I'll connect you with a financial advisor, someone who can help you clean up your business, but I won't be investing. If I saved you now, you'd never learn what I had to. Logan gave a short nod. His eyes said more than his mouth ever could, thankfulness and shame all tangled up. But Dad, he stared at me like I was a stranger. You're not the son I thought you were, he muttered. I managed a faint smile. I don't need you to think I'm anyone. I am who I am. That's enough. And with that, I walked out. The door behind me clicked shut, but the ache in my chest didn't. Relief and sorrow traveled with me as I drove north back to Minneapolis. Somewhere outside Duluth, I pulled over near a clearing by the pines. The stars above blinked like old friends. I stepped out, letting the breeze hit my face. Pine needles crunched under my shoes. The forest smelled like memoricling cold. Alive, I tilted my head back, closed my eyes, and let the quiet swallow me. It felt like Grandpa Walter was out there somewhere, watching. I'm doing the right thing, I whispered. I hope you're proud. Over the past 4 years, I didn't just multiply the money he left me, built something real. Stone and Birch Capital is more than an investment firm. It's a symbol, a testament to grit, patience, and self-worth. My father always doubted I could build anything. Logan saw me as a second player. But I became what Grandpa said I could be: disciplined, free, and fearless. I became the wolf. Now. As I sit here with this story laid bare, I want to tell you this isn't about revenge. It's about choosing your own damn path, even when the people you love beg you to turn back. Sometimes, protecting yourself is the most loving thing you can do. So here's my question for you. What would you do if standing up for yourself meant losing part of your family? Would you fold or would you rise? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this hit a nerve share, it may be someone out there needs that push to stand tall. Be like the wolf, run free, stay true. Never let anyone dim your fire.